Hey, RetconRaider here. We're coming up on the end of my first month on YouTube, so I thought I might throw together a short little podcast-style video looking back over the past few weeks. So, that said, welcome to the first episode of what I'd like to call the Retcon Retrospective. Wow, what a month! I suppose it shouldn't come as much of a surprise, but as of 4 weeks ago, I had never even touched a piece of audio or video editing software. I had very limited experience with doing voice recordings, but certainly nothing I'd ever tried to handle myself. So why in the world did I decide to suddenly start making videos? What was the origin of RetconRaider? Well, that's a bit of a complicated question, but it ultimately boils down to Phoenix Point. Obviously, I love video games, especially strategy games and role-playing games, and I'm just old enough to have fond memories of classic franchises like the original XCOM, Jagged Alliance, and Fallout trilogies. So, of course, Phoenix Point is the sort of project that I immediately fell in love with. A spiritual successor to the original XCOM games with the same granular design and micromanagement of the classic titles, but with an updated, modern interface and even more creative new features? Yes, please. I backed the project in a heartbeat. But over the first week or so, I was a bit disheartened to see how slowly the campaign was progressing. I mentioned the project to some of my friends in hopes that they'd be interested in the project too, and it worked to an extent. Some of them did like the idea enough to also pledge, but it was just a drop in the bucket. And then one of them suggested that I try putting together a podcast or video to help spread the word about the campaign. Now, that was an idea that intrigued me, though it was also a prospect I found quite intimidating. Like I said, I've never tried this sort of thing before, though I have occasionally had folks mention that my voice is well suited for this sort of thing. But nothing ventured, nothing gained, so I went ahead and borrowed a microphone and set up a very basic recording area, and threw together my first few videos using Audacity and Adobe Premiere Pro. Looking back on it, my first few videos were almost painfully amateurish, even by my own admittedly low standards. It's obvious that I started off with no idea what I was doing, but with each new video I figured out a bit more about how I should be doing things. I still have a long way to go before I'm even remotely good at this, but I like to think that I'm showing a bit of improvement from one week to the next. And somewhere along the way, a strange thing happened. Folks like you started watching the videos, and for the most part, you actually seemed to like them. I'll admit, when I first started posting videos, I was prepared for the worst. After all, the internet can be a harsh and unforgiving place, so I was steeling myself in preparation for a torrent of negativity. Suffice to say, the positive reception has been a pleasant surprise. Oh, sure, there have been a few dislikes on some of my videos, but I think the only remotely negative thing anyone had to say was that I sounded like a robot trying to emulate humanity. And honestly, as a human who strives to someday become a robot, I took that as a compliment. The technological singularity can't come soon enough. Anyway, the response to my videos was so encouraging that I started branching out a bit. If people like to hear me talk about Phoenix Point, then what else would they like to hear me talk about? Well, since Phoenix Point was a crowdfunding project I was backing, what about some of the other crowdfunding projects I had backed? Or other tactical strategy RPGs in general? So I tried some of that, and hey, it turned out that people kind of liked that too. And then the unthinkable happened, and I actually got some comments from Alan Stroud, one of the professional science fiction writers working on Phoenix Point. He had watched some of my videos, and apparently he liked them. It was incredibly flattering. And a little embarrassing, since I did make at least a few mistakes in my analysis of his fiction. And then came the shout-out from Snapshot Games. In update number 14 for the official Phoenix Point crowdfunder, the developers for the game actually linked to one of my videos, which just blew my mind. Honestly, I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. Ever since then, my numbers have been skyrocketing. Well, relatively speaking. My view count? Over 9,000. And as of writing this video, I have almost 250 subscribers. I'm certainly no YouTube big shot, but for a rank novice, I think those numbers are halfway decent. And a little intimidating. But like I said before, nothing ventured, nothing gained. When I first started out, this was just a fun little experiment. I figured I'd spread the word a bit about a project I liked, learn a little bit about how audio and video editing software work, and then stop again after a few weeks. But now, well, I think I might keep at it for a little longer and see where I can go with this. And to be perfectly frank, it's all thanks to you wonderful people. You've been amazingly kind and supportive of my efforts so far, and I want to repay you for that support by doubling down and learning how to make even better videos for you to enjoy. So what's next for old RetconRaider? Well, I'm taking the first few steps towards treating this whole YouTube thing a little more seriously. I've gone ahead and subscribed to Adobe Premiere Pro. I'm starting to study some more demos to hopefully improve my editing techniques. And I'm starting to do some research into the legal side of things. The last thing I want to do is accidentally violate copyrights or intellectual property rights. I'm sure that some of you have noticed that I was just approved by YouTube for ad support, and I'll be experimenting with monetizing some of my videos over the next few weeks, as I try to find a good middle ground. I'm not trying to get rich, I'm just hoping that I can bring in a bit of money to help pay for better recording equipment. Right now, I'm using a second-hand microphone that's buried inside a cardboard box full of packing foam. But I've got my eye on some slightly fancier gizmos, like a proper isolation wall, a shock mount, and a boom stand, among other things. I'll be ordering those just as soon as I've made enough to afford them. And, well, beyond that, I'll keep using any money I make to help further improve the channel. And possibly for things like food and electricity. Those might help me keep making videos, too. I'm going to start exploring my options with getting some proper channel art, some custom music, and maybe even a proper intro and outro for my videos. I'm not sure exactly how I'll be approaching some of these things, but I'd love to hear your opinions on it. Oh, and I don't want to make a habit of asking for things like likes and subscribes, but I do want to assure you that every single one of them is appreciated. And hey, even if you don't like something I did, let me know what it was, and hopefully I can improve on that in the future. After all, I wouldn't still be here if it weren't for you. So please, feel free to drop some comments below. Share your thoughts and opinions on this whole thing, and I'll try to make sure I respond to each and every one of them. It's the least I can do. But for now, I've got a lot more videos to work on, and a lot more research to do about how to properly set up a semi-professional looking channel. I've got a couple of Van Buren videos in the works, plus another piece about Phoenix Point, this time analyzing and speculating over the game's class system. You can expect to see those coming out over the next week. So, this is RetconRaider, signing off. Thanks for listening. Oh, and remember, if you need to get in touch with me for any reason, then you can either leave a comment on any of my videos, or use my contact information below. Links are in the description.